Hey, I'm Kaz, and welcome to my channel. My channel is all about my story about how I was given up for adoption as a baby and how I met my birth family and eventually was adopted by them. My story is very long and complicated, so today I'm going to share the overview of my story, and then every week I'm going to post videos of my memories from my childhood and growing up to get to where I am now. So if you like what you hear, like, subscribe, and comment down below for stories that you're interested in or questions that you may have. My intent on sharing my story is not to hurt anybody. My intent is because my story needs to be heard and my story needs to be shared. There were a lot of things that a lot of people could have done better, and I'm at a point in my life where I have forgiveness in my heart, but like I said, my story does need to be told. I'm telling my story from my perspective because there are numerous people involved in my story. I will not use any names, and I will not speak for somebody else from their perspective because I only know my perspective. Also, please have grace with my green screen learning because sometimes it gets a little fuzzy and I'm still figuring out my lighting and learning the green screen as well. So without any other distractions, here is my story. I was given up for adoption at birth. My adoptive mom was 16 and she wanted to do the very best for me. She wanted me to have a better life than I would have had with her at 16. In the 90s, things were a little different for teen moms, and she knew that my best chance was to be given up for adoption. I still 100% believe in that, and I completely agree with her decision. And if I could go back in time to tell her anything, I wouldn't stop this. This isn't the decision I would stop. My adoptive family weren't so honest to the adoption agency, and whether it was a lie of omission or just a flat out lie, my adoptive mom had cancer and she passed away whenever I was 18 months old. I was her dying wish. She wanted a baby, and so they bought her a baby, and I just happened to be the baby that they bought for her. When she died, I know it was very hard for my adoptive dad, and so he got remarried to my adoptive stepmom, who was very abusive to me. She abused me from the time that I was 2 until I moved out whenever I was 10. I moved in with my adoptive parents, or my adoptive mom's parents, my grandparents. That was not a good situation either. My grandfather was emotionally abusive to me, and at that point in my life, I remember making the decision that I was no longer going to lay down and let somebody run over me. I was going to fight, and so I did. And I fought just as much I fought as much as he could give. And so the bottom line for me was that I wasn't going to be treated like I didn't matter, and I wasn't going to be somebody else's punching bag. So whenever I moved in with my grandparents, everybody thought, it was the best thing in the world because they had money. I could do gymnastics, I could do dance, I can do whatever I want because they could afford it. They were in the church, they were leaders in the church, and so it didn't matter that I was still being abused. And that is a really hard pill to swallow, that, oh, it was better than the other one, right? It was better. You're okay now. But I wasn't. And it was really hard for me. When I was 14, my birth mother came to visit me. So to backtrack, my birth parents had gotten married and they had my other siblings, And I have step siblings as well from my adoptive dad and stepmom. And I'll go into some of those stories later in future videos. But my birth parents were married, and I always knew I was adopted. So I saw my birth parents, I believe I know for sure my 7th birthday, but maybe my 6th or 8th birthday as well. They came to town to my birthday. I don't know if I said this, but they lived an hour away. And then they came to my 13th birthday party, and I really felt a strong connection to my birth mom. Of course, she was my birth mom, but she was also very intuitive to my situation, and I know she wanted to connect with me, but I also know that it was very hard for her. I chose to invite my birth mom and siblings over whenever I was 14 for some reason. I'm not really sure why. It just felt right. And so I did. And like I said, my birth mom was very intuitive to my situation because she had been abused in her life as well. And not to share her story, I say that to say that she knew what she was looking at that point. So she asked my grandfather if I could stay the weekend with them in the town that they lived in. And my grandfather was like, please take her off of my hands. Like, she is nuts, which I was. Because that's what happens when people take your power. You either stand up or cower down, and I stood up. So my first weekend at my parents' house was amazing. I felt like I had found people in the world that were just as weird as me. And that is such an amazing feeling when you sit down with these people and you're like, this is me. Like, these people are me. We have the same personality. There's a lot said for the nature versus nurture argument. And there's a lot of nature that goes into all of us. And I was seeing it there. And it was really cool to see. I have a summer birthday, and I was a freshman in high school. So that was the second semester of my freshman year that I started spending weekends at my parents' house. After the school year was over, I don't remember much of the summer, and I'll probably have to ask my dad because he remembers everything. But I do remember, I spent a significant amount of time at their house over the summer, and I didn't spend very much time at my grandparents' house. And I know that was to protect me because I was starting to get into trouble, as teenagers do in a small town. And they were really trying to save me from myself at that point. And I didn't appreciate it then, but I do now. So I spent most of the summer at their house, and right before I turned 15, so this had to be around June, my sneaky old dad handed me a yearbook of the kids' school. They went to a private school, and I was looking through the yearbook, and I said, I think I would like to go to school here. And my dad was like, oh, you do? And I was like, I do. I really do. So that kind of got the ball rolling on me moving in with them. But it was pretty back and forth. Maybe it was May, because it was pretty back and forth between my grandparents and my dad and mom. And I was so done with everybody deciding where I should live. Like, who's going to take Kaz? Who's going to take Kaz? Who's going to be her parents? Like, are we going to take this tornado? Are we going to keep her? I was such a handful that nobody wanted me. But the reason I was a handful is because of the abuse and not because of respect. And that was really hard. That was a really hard time for me because, again, nobody really wanted me because now I'm a threat to this family who's already been together for however many years. And I was a part of nothing. I didn't have a family. I just kind of floated around. And then my parents made the decision to get custody of me. And a week before I turned 15, I was legally my parents through custody. But my parents got custody of me, and that was a really good day in our lives. It was a day to celebrate, but it also was so hard to be thrown into another house, to another family, to have to learn new family rules, new family values, and some of the values I didn't quite meet up with. It was really hard. My sister was 8 at the time. She's 6 years younger than me. And she is the reason her and I are so close. And she pecked and pecked and pecked at me, and she kept on, and she just loved me. She wanted a sister, and she didn't care that her sister was broken, and she really showed me what true love is and how to really love another human being. And I'm so grateful for that lesson. Because even at 8 years old, she was healthy enough to just love another human being no matter what. And I needed that. And my parents did. It was hard. Again, I'm not going to speak for the perspective of others, just my perspective. But I know from speaking with my mom that she had to tell herself for 14 years that I was not her daughter. And then all of a sudden, I was her daughter. And that is not an easy thing to come to grips with. And it happened so quickly, and there were no resources for us. My mother was turned down by a few counselors that she was seeking counsel because this situation is so hard. We really were just kind of in the trenches together, making our way, because there's not really a rule book for this. And it was not an easy decision for my parents to bring me into their home with their children. And yes, I was their child too, but I was also somebody else's child. And their decision to do that saved my life. So I lived with them throughout high school, and I graduated high school. And I graduated in May, so I was 17 when I graduated, but I turned 18 in July. And then we started the adoption proceedings because an adult adoption is about $10,000 cheaper than a child adoption. And while it wasn't about money, I knew who I belonged to with my parents. And so being adopted by my birth parents was really a cool thing, and it was the next step. I kept my original maiden name. I kept my original last name for the next 4 years. And I finally decided that I wanted to be a Taylor as well. So I changed my last name in January, and my husband proposed to me in May, and we got married in July. So I only got to keep my maiden name for 6 months, but it's on my birth certificate. And when my kids open bank accounts and the security question is, what's your mother's maiden name? I know what it's gonna be. And I know that sounds really silly. I didn't know my husband was gonna propose to me. I didn't even know he liked me like that. But to me, knowing that that is my maiden name really kind of solidified me in the fact that these are my people, and I got to pick them. I got to pick the people who loved me when I was at my most broken, and who picked me up and walked me through the rest of my adolescence and most of my adulthood. I am so thankful for my family, for all of my family. I have a lot of forgiveness in my heart for the mistakes that other people have made, especially in my story, because nobody is perfect. And there were a lot of hard decisions that everybody had to make. I will be sharing some of those in future videos that I share, because it's just too much to all sit down and share it right now. So I will share more of my story, more details every week, and I am going to really open up. I am hoping to write a book about my whole experience and all of my stories. So if you liked my story and want to follow for more details, subscribe, comment, and like my videos. I will try really hard not to cry. I have Insta and Facebook right now. I will consider a Twitter, but I honestly don't know how any of that crap works. So my social media is linked below if you want to find me and follow me and my family. And with that, I will come up with a fancy outro and an intro as I get better at this. So we'll see y'all next time.